Welcome to our home. I'm Roberta Krumholz, and my husband Arnie and I took a picture. We want to welcome you to this exciting evening. I am absolutely thrilled to have Ed Potosnak here, and of course Congressman Barney Frank. Ed has approached me to use the house and to have this beautiful welcoming for him and for Barney. And I'm so thrilled to have you all here sharing in this, because as you know, he's going to be our next congressman. Yay! And it couldn't happen to a nicer person. Right. I want to take this opportunity now to let Ed speak to you directly, and after Ed, I will be happy to introduce Congressman Frank. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, first let me start by saying thank you to our wonderful hosts, Arnold and Roberta. And then to all of you for being here, for enjoying this time here with us on this special occasion for the support of my 2012 campaign. I have a little list of people that I want to make sure I cover before I share a little bit about my feelings why I'm running. Larry Lerner is hiding somewhere. I know I saw him earlier. I want to thank him especially for making the connection with the Krumholzes. Larry ran in the 7th Congressional District back in 1998 and has been a great advocate and a wonderful friend. 96. And of course, Congressman Frank for joining us all the way from Massachusetts and earlier today Princeton. So we're very grateful. A couple of folks on my staff, you met Becky when you came in, and Jason, who helped do the event, who's not here but here in spirit. He got food poisoning. But luckily, not here. So you're good. And then my partner Jeremy is floating around in the back. Thank you. We woke up this morning and we started working on a boat that we just purchased, a sailboat. I don't even know if I told my family yet. So it's a nice little sailboat. He's a sailor. So,
what are you calling it?
And then it's called the Fallen Eagle. But that sounds a little like we're going to die. And he's really the sailor, so he's the one that says that you can't change the name. It's bad luck. So that's going to be a negotiation. And then most especially my family. I got my mom is here. My 2 brothers. They're older. David and Greg. And then my father, who's here with his partner Cece, right here. And being that it's Father's Day tomorrow, I thought I would tell you a little bit about my dad and why he's so important to me. And earlier today, I fact-checked some of this information. But you know, my father had many vocations, quite entrepreneurial. Probably part of the reason, and I would say something I'm very grateful for my entrepreneurial spirit. For me, getting involved in my own small business and really taking on tasks and really trying to change the world. He started with a deli in Passaic, New Jersey, that he ran with my mother, and then also worked at Continental Can. He was an iron worker, making cans for almost 8 years. Went on to start a carpet installation business as a union carpenter, installing carpet. And someone there. Union folks are our great friends, and they're in a tough time right now. And then went on to start a battery business, making batteries for police and fire. And we did that in our house, my whole family, welding in the basement, making these packs. And if that doesn't tell you that as Americans, we can accomplish great things when we put our minds to it. My father is a great example of that. And I want to just thank him and say I love you. Thank you. Happy Father's Day. And I think I'm safe if I tweet the photo of us kissing. That's okay. The comedy night was 2 nights ago. But seriously, the reason that we're here is because our nation is facing great challenges. We can see with the Republican Congress how vastly different their views are, their values are, than the things that we care about. The most recent votes that they've taken on ending Medicare as we know it to turn it into an inadequate voucher program, that's not what we need to move our country forward. They want to take our country back to a different time, when people didn't have access to medical care, where folks had to choose between food and medication, or even seeing a doctor if they could have a chance to have access to that prescription to live. And just this week I had the pleasure of meeting Jim, who sold us our sailboat. He's in his late 60s, and he has kidney failure. So 3 times a week he goes to get dialysis, and he can't afford the drugs to keep himself alive. On disability, they don't even cover it. And he works part-time at a place, you might know the car company, Nissan. Makes about $27,000 a year, and he's struggling to pay for the basic necessities, to get food on his table, and that's why he's selling the boat. And he's super happy that we're excited about it, because he knows he can share that with us. But that's a choice for him. He should really be focusing on other things. Because of his medical care, because there's no access for him to a prescription program. Either he makes too little and can't afford it, the copays, or he makes too much and just barely gets by. And that's really not the America that I believe in. It's for the folks that I'm really concerned about, our youth, our children. We have to make sure we invest in education, invest in them, so that they can give back to our country, so that they can continue to create jobs, to grow businesses, to invent the next, I'll use a prop because I always did that in the classroom, the next iPhone or whatever it might be. That's what's going to make America stronger. That's what's going to make our nation stronger. And right now people are suffering. A lot of people are unemployed. And so I'm running for Congress so we can get them back to work. So we can create those jobs and grow those businesses. You can applaud any moment. We did. Because the Republicans, they ran on something, I heard it over and over again with my opponent when I ran in 2010, uncertainty. They haven't provided any certainty. If anything, they've created more uncertainty. Businesses are uncertain. Homeowners trying to get loans and they can't get it. Businesses are trying to grow, they can't have access to capital. We have the power right here among us, our entrepreneurial spirit, our educated folks that want to go out and get jobs and invent the next solution to the problems that we face, whether it's energy, technology, because we all love it, all the things that we care about and need to grow our nation. And so I'm running for Congress to get our priorities right again, to move our country forward instead of going backwards. I know we have Congressman Barney Frank here, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact that we want to make sure we can have access to that capital for homeowners. Right now, I was trying to get a mortgage for a home that I'm buying, an investment property, and they put us 2 months raking us through the coals. Very, very difficult. And if any of you are looking, I know there's thousands of, probably tens of thousands, maybe millions of folks who are in trouble because of their homes. They don't have access to their mortgage because they're being in foreclosure, or they want to buy a house and they can't. We need to make sure we get that capital moving. And those are the things, a few, that I'm going to talk about tonight that I care about with the deepness of my heart, and I'm committed to providing those solutions. But the really exciting piece is that you're all here, because I can't do the things that I care about, and in the ways that we mutually will maybe argue a little, but know that we need to move our country forward without your help. So the Krumholzes, you opened up your home. There are others of you out there who could help me, help us, help elect me to Congress, who could have some friends over for coffee and get a chance to meet your neighbors. If you're able and willing, I'll take your name. Becky, who you met on the way in, will take your name. Those of you who have donated, we have a great host committee. And people have reached deep into their pockets and their friends' pockets, and I thank you. But if you can do it again, if you could double down on Ed Potosnak, it would make a huge difference in our campaign. Because together we can change Washington, but it takes a mutual understanding and a partnership. And you are part of my team. So thank you for being here and being part of the team. I know there are great things to come in 2012, and I know that with your help, we'll celebrate in November my election, and for years to come, enjoy times like this together in good weather and bad weather, and good times and bad times, always putting our nation ahead of the special interests that have gotten a stranglehold over the Republican Party in Washington. But I have a great honor and a privilege to introduce you tonight to a representative from Massachusetts, where I just was, you could probably correct me, was it last weekend?
Yes, we can.
In Tanglewood with one of my college friends and his partner, who had a wedding. And I hope that one day here in New Jersey we can also share marriage equality like they have in Massachusetts. Congressman Barney Frank is the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee. Many of you know this, but I'll remind those of you who may not know this. Born and raised here in New Jersey, and actually some of his family are floating around. Where are you guys? Aha! David, right? His cousin. They grew up in the same home, right? And we're really glad you can join us. And he's back here today to share with us some information about what's happening in Washington, but also he gets it. He's been there through the tough times, and he's fighting every single day to make sure that the choices that we make as a country are the ones that move our country forward. And so it's a pleasure and an honor to invite you and have you here speak.
Thank you, Roberta, for opening their home and then getting us out of it, COVID again, but to be next to it, that's good. And thank all you for coming. Many of you are probably unhappy with the fact that the United States Supreme Court has ruled that alone in the history of democracy and unique in democracies today, elections in America are conducted with no restrictions whatsoever on people spending vast amounts of money anonymously. That has never been considered to be an essential in democracy. There is no other democracy today, not France, not Denmark, not Israel, not any other country in the world that has free elections that follows it. We are stuck with it because of that right-wing Supreme Court. And I have to tell you, if you don't like it, people are unhappy about these decisions that allow all this right-wing money to flow. There's only one thing you can do about it, and that's to try to give, not obviously dollar for dollar, but at least in some order of magnitude in contravention of it. Because the way the Supreme Court has ruled, there is nothing we can do to stop it. All you can do, if you are appalled by that and what it buys for some of the worst values around, is to try and arm those of us who are fighting them with enough to get by. As I said, we don't have to meet them dollar for dollar. So I am very appreciative of your being here, because without this kind of support, we're just going to get swamped with this right-wing money. Secondly, I'm here because I had met Ed, who'd come to see me, and I've been very impressed with his understanding of the issues and his good political sense. He's got the right values and a good understanding of how you get them implemented. And I look forward to having him as a colleague. And finally, let me be very clear. No matter what his previous political career was, at this point, from the standpoint of public policy, there is no substantial difference between Leonard Vance and Michelle Bachmann. I wish that weren't the case. Well, I wish a lot of things. I wish I could eat more in that gangway. I had the same energy I had 20 years ago. The fact is that the Republican Party in the Congress today, in the House, consists of two groups. People who agree with Michelle Bachmann and people who, because they are afraid of losing a primary to someone who agrees with Michelle Bachmann, vote with her. And that's on issue after issue. The extremism is complete. We are talking about women's rights, we are talking about any semblance of equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. We are talking about any concern with climate change, with the need to deal with the environment. We are talking about Medicare, obviously. By the way, the Republican Medicare thing has an angle. I don't know if people have fully understood. But under their plan, if you're under 55, when you reach Medicare age, you will not get full Medicare. You will get an insurance, the right to go to an insurance company, and some money, but clearly no one thinks anything like what you would get under full Medicare. But you do have one thing in common. But if you're 55 and over, you will get full Medicare. But if you're under 55, don't feel that you're totally discriminated against under the Republican plan that says you won't get Medicare. Because under that Republican plan, you'll still pay the same taxes as if you were going to get Medicare. Under the Republican plan, if you're under 55, you continue to pay the full Medicare tax. You just don't get Medicare. Now, this is one of the unusual programs which is funded by a special tax. So the notion that you would charge people the full tax rate and not give them the program, the only analogy I can think of is, you know, we pay for the highways by the gasoline tax. It's kind of like, okay, if you're under 55, you'll pay the same gasoline tax, but you cannot drive an interstate that ends in an even number. Really, I've never seen anything quite like it. They want to cut Medicare. They want to increase military spending. And in particular, because Mr. Lance is on the Fair Services Committee, he voted against any additional financial regulation. Now, you can argue about the details, but we are now dealing with the question of speculation in energy. Years ago, the economists argued that speculation really didn't do much. Supply and demand did it. That was some time ago. Today, the amount of money and the volume of trading that can take place, the information technology is such that Goldman Sachs, not a radical group, estimates in its own internal analyses and what it tells its clients that speculation adds $20 a barrel to the cost of oil. Wilbur Ross, the sort of vulture investor, again, there's a general sense that speculation adds to the price of oil. In the bill we passed last year, we give the Commodities Futures Trading Commission the power to tell people who do not use oil, please to stop buying so much of it, since they buy it for the sole purpose of holding it off the market and then selling it when the price goes up. Mr. Lance is against that. He supports legislation that would prevent that from taking effect and reduces the spending that would go to the agency. We set up an independent consumer bureau because up until last year, if you had a problem with your bank, you went to the bank regulators, the control of the currency, the Federal Reserve, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Their primary orientation is to make sure the banks stay in business. You know, they worry more about the banks than about individuals. There's also a kind of if you're a member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, you're there to make macroeconomic policy, to go debate at Basel with what the capital requirement should be for the mega banks. If some old lady has a beef with her bank, it's really not going to get your attention, to be honest with you. And we set up an independent consumer bureau to mediate, to be a place where consumers could go if they would complain about the financial institutions, precisely because the bank regulators hadn't done it. The Republican position is that we have to change that, Mr. Lance is part of this, and put the bank regulators in charge of the consumer bureau, totally vitiating the reason that we set it up. AIG, I was just talking to my cousin David, who knows a great deal about financial matters, and I learned a lot from him. And he noted one of the problems we have now is what's going to happen with Greece. And by the way, the second year in a row, our economy has been slowed down by the problems over there. And we were doing well, and there's nervousness about that. But one question is, well, are you going to make the Greeks, is the rest of the world going to give Greece enough money to pay off all the money it owes, if that's the only way they can do it? Or you say to some of the people they owe it to, hey, the Greeks haven't got enough money, and we're not going to give them any more. You've got to take 80%, 90%. You've got to wait longer. But the problem is a lot of American banks appear to have insured the Greek debt, so that if Greece doesn't make the payments on time, that could trigger a problem with American banks, as David pointed out to me. But we don't know how much, because we're back to the AIG situation. And if you've seen the movie Too Big to Fail, I recommend it. I think it's a pretty good...
The book's better.
What?
The book's better.
Yeah, but people are not likely to read the book. But it's a movie. I will tell you a little side thing. I was told that a small part for me, a guy playing me. And I was, at first, I said, well, who plays me? So the guy from Cheers. So I answered it because I had this lifelong struggle. I was terrified it was George Wendt. Fortunately, it was not him. It was a guy named Danny Hedaya, whose name I didn't know, but he played Carlin's husband, Nick Tortelli. So he played me. So that's okay. But remember that AIG was the precipitating problem. We had Lehman Brothers, and AIG couldn't pay off its credit default swaps, its insurance policies against securities other people had bought. And what David says reminds me of where we were. On a Tuesday, Ben Bernanke and Hank Paulson came to us and said, we got to help AIG. We can't allow them to collapse the way Lehman did. The world will end. And Bernanke said, under my authority, which we have, by the way, since changed. You can't do this. I don't anymore. I'm lending AIG $82 billion. A week later, he said, oh, it turns out AIG needs another $100 billion. They had no idea. AIG had no idea how much it owed. Now, we passed a law that can't happen anymore. First of all, they won't be able to sell those things without putting up capital sufficient to pay off if they have to. And secondly, if they are dealing with a purely financial institution, not an airline that has to do this, the people who have to post margin, so that, again, you have some protection. Now, that's specifically to keep an AIG from happening again. Mr. Lance wants to abolish that. Well, I take it back. They only want to suspend it for 2 years. And they say they have to suspend it because the agencies involved in writing the rules aren't doing a good enough job. But at the same time, they are denying the funding to the agencies that write the rules, so they can't do a good job, so they can use that. There are other problems. In terms of the economy, private sector has been gaining jobs every month for the last year. That gain, it's not been as big as it should have been, as we were hoping for a couple of times, but in every month that the private sector has gained jobs in the last year, that has been partially offset by a loss in state and local jobs. This article today, New York Times, local governments alone have 466,000 fewer people working today. Throw in the state government, and you're essentially at a point where if the state and local governments had simply stayed even, not hired any new people, but not laid off people, unemployment would be more like 8.2% than 9.1%, with consequent good results in the economy. But that's, again, where these people are. And I mentioned Leonard Lance, obviously, because Ed ran against him last time. We'll be running against him again, probably, depending on redistricting. And I said, am I being unfair in singling him out? No, I'm not singling him out. That's precisely the point. There is no more individual there. He is a eager member of this very right-wing bloc. And I have served in the Congress from 1995 to 2006. I was in the minority with Republicans. And we could disagree, but you could work together. These people just have no notion of the importance of the public sector. I am afraid they are going to provoke a great crisis, because I believe they will, no matter what, they're not going to vote to raise the debt limit. And they just don't understand what the consequences are. It may be that their friends in the business community are going to say to them, no, guys, that's just going too far. But the unwillingness to work together and to govern is enormous. By the way, they talk about the Constitution. They don't understand the American Constitution. They take the position that because they got a majority in the House, which they did in the last election, they set the whole policy. That's not the American Constitution. In fact, the Democrats in 2009, after the election, had a bigger majority in the House than they do today. In the American government, at any given time, you are governed by the last 3 elections. That's in the Constitution. That's the checks and balances. You have 6-year terms in the Senate, 4-year terms in the presidency, 2-year terms in the House. And you have to, you win the last House election, you got a lot of influence, but you're not judged. They have us confused, ironically, for the Tea Party people, with England. In England, they had an election for the House of Commons. If you win a majority of the House of Commons on Tuesday, on Wednesday, you go over to Buckingham Palace, the Queen says you're the Prime Minister and you're in charge. That's it. There's no transition. Side issues that we do have one of the things that exacerbated our crisis in 2008, one reason why we don't have a better deal for people with mortgage problems is that it hit the fan right about the time of the transition. By the time we were able to get the mechanisms in place, the election had taken place, and it was a transition between Bush and Obama. And I will tell you, because I was in the middle of that, it was awful. There was nobody to make any decisions. At one point, and I was a little frustrated with Obama too, we were trying to get him to do something on mortgages. And Obama said, well, he said publicly, we only have one president at a time. This was like in December. And I get so unhappy. I said to the press, when he said we only have one president at a time, he was overestimating the number. He and Bush both got pissed, but the other one was that. This this is really, this really demands us to mobilize. Because I will tell you this, if these people are successful in 2012, first of all, it's the end of a tradition of moderate republicanism. You know, by the way, New Jersey has some responsibility of that. Because I look back historically, anybody want to guess what was the first serious assault on moderate republicanism in the past years? It was the defeat of Clifford Case, right? My cousin knows. That's if I do. When Cliff Case lost in 1978 to a right-wing Republican, Jeff Bell, the next year Javits lost. That was the beginning of the end of the moderate Republicans. It's taken this time, but they're all gone. There are a few who would like to be moderate, but don't have the courage to do it. And if these people are not, let's put it this way, if you do not pay a price for this kind of extremism, social, economic, military, in every other way, if they don't pay a price for that kind of extremism, then we are in serious trouble in our ability to govern ourselves as a country. So, I come back to that. I would have been glad to be supportive of him for a variety of reasons. He will be an excellent member of Congress. And again, I am struck by the fact that he is both passionate about the issues but pragmatic about them. There is this mistaken notion that somehow being idealistic and being pragmatic are somehow opposites. In fact, the more deeply committed you are to your ideals, the more you are morally obligated to try to get them implemented, which means you get to be pragmatic. There's this notion that you show your passion, the depth of your conviction by being unrealistic and not caring whether your ideals ever get wrong. It's wrong. Ed, and I know from talking about him, clearly understands how wrong that is, understands what you should do and how you do it. So in any year it would be important. But in this year, again, and I don't know what Leonard Nance is going to do, and he's going to come back and talk about his moderation again. But there was none of it left. There was none of it left. They are all now enablers of the most right-wing elements in the Congress, and that makes this very important. And your money is very important. Again, you'll go back to where I started. There is an unrestricted flow of right-wing money coming in, and they have enough so that they will monitor this. And once it becomes clear that a district is in jeopardy, they'll throw in the money. So the only way you can offset that is to do what you're doing. So I appreciate people being here. If you can do more and continue to help and ask some friends, maybe put together a few of your own friends to do that, that would be helpful. I think Ed's coming to Congress is a twofer. You get a first-rate member of Congress, and you help us take back the House from a group of people who are really going to wreck the government if they're not stopped.
I want to thank you for coming, Congressman Frank. Ed, I wish you the best of luck, as does, I think, everybody that's here to support you tonight. As they both have said, it would be wonderful if anybody would host a gathering, a coffee, a tea, a soda, whatever you would like for Ed to help us or help him get the ball rolling. It's an honor for me to help you out, and I certainly hope that we can do something to get you elected. I know your opponent, and Bachman is right. That's all I don't mean that she's right politically. I mean the congressman's statement was correct. I want to thank you all for coming. I would like to tell you, if you want to help out, you want to give extra donations tonight or offer to host something for Ed, Becky is very willing to see you by my front door. So thank you again. Please finish eating, drinking, and my thanks for you all coming to support us.